Welcome. You are listening to the Play Big Queen podcast. This is for you if you are a woman who is an entrepreneur, business owner, professional, leader, or someone who is deeply committed to personal growth, self-improvement, transformation, and living authentically. This is especially for you if you have an invisible disability, whether you are diagnosed, undiagnosed, self-diagnosed, or late diagnosed, and you are working on reclaiming your neurodivergent identity, rebuilding confidence, learning what works for your unique brilliance while breaking free from small people-pleasing conditioning. If you are a visionary change maker interested in advancing your leadership and creating success on your terms, and you want to leave a legacy, if you are navigating disability or neurodiversity as an individual or as an ally, and you are looking for a supportive and inclusive environment to thrive, then this is for you. I am your hostess, Kate Bailey. I am the Play Big Queen. My name is my title and a command for all women. Play Big Queen. I invite you to claim this title for yourself and coronate your Play Big self too, if it serves you. I am a business and embodiment mentor working with women who are ready to rise the fuck up and be your bold, beautiful, sexy ass self, start and grow your big, bold vision, and claim that you too get to have your boldest desires. I am the creatrix of Kate Bailey LLC, which provides coaching services, educational courses, products, and experiences that promote success in neurodiversity advocacy, women's empowerment, embodiment, entrepreneurship, and business to serve women on their transformational journey. To learn more about my company offerings and to get on my email list, go to xxxkatebailey.com. If you would like to learn more about my work, my personal values, my mission, and my community, make sure you catch the last 5 minutes of this episode to go deeper and learn so much more. On this podcast, sometimes we will have guests. Sometimes I'll do solo episodes, but every single time you listen, you will expand. So get ready. It's a new era for women on the Play Big path. Long may we reign.
Welcome back, my Play Big Queens. Guess who's got her voice back? Yeah. Oh my gosh. And you're going to want to save this episode and maybe even share it because it is going to be a true resource for anyone selling on social media. But first, can we just take a moment to acknowledge just how happy and ecstatic I am to be back in the saddle and have my voice back for this week in particular. I am feeling major things shifting and there's a lot of growth on my end. I closed my Play Big Queens accountability program this past week after running the program for 3 years, and we had our last group call this past Thursday. And oh my gosh, I am feeling the full range of my feelings. I am feeling so deeply honored to have shared such an intimate and exquisite space with my OG Play Big Queens in the accountability program over these past few years. And I'm still digesting and integrating the reflections and frames from our time together and working on fully feeling the magnitude of what we built together in collaboration with my facilitation and guidance. And it really feels like a milestone moment. I can sense myself stepping into a new level of maturity in my work. So over the next few weeks, you're going to see some updates here on the podcast as things evolve, and I'm grateful to be at this stage of development with you. But today, we're going to dive into something that every entrepreneur, coach, and creator has to face at some point or another, and that is selling. If you're like most of my clients, the word sales probably brings up pressure, scripts, and that fake smile energy we have all seen. But I want to offer you another way, a way that is body-led, creative, and deeply human. This is creative selling. And in today's episode, I'm going to define it, walk you through the classic sales process step by step, and show you how it applies to organic social media marketing, and even give you a glimpse of how AI is reshaping the landscape for all of us. So let's start first with the definition, because creative selling is actually a defined business term. The creative selling process is the process of seeking out potential customers, analyzing their needs, determining how your product or service benefits them, and then communicating that information in a way that deeply resonates. And here's the big thing with creative selling. Unlike old school selling, creative selling is not about tricking someone into a yes. It's not about manipulation. It's not about trying to maneuver their thought process to get them to a yes. It's about connecting your lived experience, your story, and your embodied presence with the people who need what you offer the most. When selling is creative, it feels like art, like storytelling, like resonance. It can even feel playful and flirtatious. It can feel like a romance, depending on your flavor of how you creatively sell and develop relationships that lead to sales. It's not about memorizing someone else's formula. It's about using your unique way of expressing yourself, whether that's through writing, teaching, speaking, or simply showing up in community. And I know for so many entrepreneurs, especially in the social media space, there's a massive struggle with learning how to sell. And I'm no exception to this, especially as someone who is a neurodivergent entrepreneur and business owner. The way I have relationships and have relationships in business is not typical. And the same challenges that show up in a lot of our areas in life as someone who is neurodivergent or with an invisible disability, where our behavior can be misinterpreted, like needing to trust your own timing, being misinterpreted as being lazy, or needing to take more breaks and engage in more self-care because you're navigating a disability, translating somehow into being unreliable or speaking directly in a different tone or cadence, somehow being misinterpreted as being unempathetic or unkind. And I think because of this right here, how neurodivergent people and people with invisible disabilities or mental health challenges tend to mask in neurotypical environments, we wind up hiding, suppressing, or altering our natural behaviors or expressions so we can appear more acceptable in certain environments. And it's really exhausting. If you've ever been in like a dance class and you didn't know the moves, so you kind of like look to the left of you and you look to the right of you and you're like, okay, this person is putting their hands up, so I'll put my hands up like that. That's what I'm seeing a lot in the social media space when it comes to selling, especially with neurodivergent entrepreneurs. Because in addition to masking and like trying to figure out social norms, communication norms, we're also trying to figure out what are the relational norms when selling. And there's a lot of information out there. And so what'll happen is many scrappy ad hoc entrepreneurs today that are already selling, they're like posting on Facebook, Instagram, writing newsletters and emails or making TikToks. And they're doing all this and they've never actually learned the conscious process of selling. And I recognize that's a very general statement because there are lots of people who love to information stem out there in the neurodivergent and disability communities who might go into learning about the process of selling, but keeping that process at the forefront and learning how to integrate it and implement it is not something that always comes naturally without somebody else either modeling sales conversations, helping you stay true to yourself in the process, or making sure that you feel confident or secure in how you express yourself during this process. So what happens? Right? We wind up mimicking what we see others doing online. And that can involve some things that are taught in marketing classes and business schools that do contribute to sales but might not feel authentic to you, like using urgency timers or getting the perfect hook or having these like long persuasive captions. And like none of that stuff is wrong if it works for you. Like for me, sometimes I'll use urgency timers in my marketing because I know I have a lot of ADHDers in my world who do better with showing up for the things that they want to show up for if there's a timer on it. But I also do a lot of work to communicate in the middle of that manufactured urgency reassurance that like, you will be fine if you don't buy my service or the product that I'm offering, to trust yourself and what you really need. And here's how to do that. But there are some people who are still using these methods that they've kind of mimicked from everybody else. And underneath it, they're still out of alignment with the things that they choose to practice in business from an unconscious place. And when your foundation around your selling practices is shaky, that's when a lot of entrepreneurs and new business founders and startup founders can start really spiraling down into shame, avoidance, and burnout. And the truth is, if you're trying to sell without your foundations in order, that's really like trying to build a house on top of sand. You can post all day long. Some people even encourage like just show up, just, use online as a journal and say the things. But if you don't know the process, you're always going to feel like you're hustling instead of building. And your process is always going to be like throwing spaghetti at the wall instead of being intentional and conscious about the types of people that you want to bring into your products or services and what they're dealing with and where they're at in life, and making sure that you're coming in at that stage of their life with solutions that they're actually needing. So I say all this to say, this is why I want to walk you through the 7 steps of the creative selling process as they teach it in business and marketing programs. And if you're the type of person that likes to take notes, like this is a real educational episode, so you can whip out your journal or come back to it later and write it down and see where you can build out your own process that feels good to you within this framework. So the first step of creative selling is prospect and qualify. Prospecting means identifying who your people actually are. Online, this might look like noticing who engages with your posts, paying attention to who asks questions in your DMs, and tracking which emails get replies or are getting looked at. Qualifying essentially means asking, is this someone who's likely to need my work? Can they afford it? Do they feel aligned? It saves you from chasing followers who will never buy and instead helps you focus on resonance. Our second stage in creative selling is the pre-approach. So the pre-approach, this is your research phase. In traditional sales, it means studying the client's background. So on social media, it might look like reading their comments and posts to see what they're struggling with, noticing the language that they use to describe their challenges, getting curious about what season of life they're in. And when you know what matters to them, your content naturally feels more relevant. But I think it's important to specify here, like, don't change your content and your voice and who you are because you think that somebody else is going to notice the problem that you solve, right? Like, create your content from the place of your expertise and what you're great at and what you know you can help people with. And then when you're in the pre-approach phase and you're researching, see who might be a match for you. The third step or phase or whatever in creative selling is approach. This is your first point of contact. Instead of like sliding into a DM with a, hey girl, I've got an amazing business opportunity for you. Please don't do that. Creative selling. Oh, I had to catch my breath for a second. Okay. No, creative selling means leading with value and connection, right? Maybe it's a story that mirrors their aspirations or their pain points. Maybe it's a free resource that builds trust. Maybe it's a genuine comment that shows you actually see them. The approach is about building a rapport. It's not about pushing. And this can be really challenging for my entrepreneurs who feel the pressure of really needing to make your business work in combination with anxiety or maybe some neurodivergent social traits. Like, it's really important that you're not enforcing here. Like, don't pressure or force. And I kind of think of it like a garden. And I've shared in some of my programs lately and some other episodes, I've been like tending to my little garden on my back porch lately. Sometimes this can be challenging for neurodivergent people and this is a generalization, not everybody is like this, but like sometimes we can come off really intense or withdrawn, or things just come out sideways. There can be an awkwardness to it, but like, we're not a monolith. That's not a stereotype. Every neurodivergent person isn't awkward. But as someone who is ADHD, I'm definitely that friend who can be like your friend and not talk to you for months and then pick up right where we left off. In creative selling, when you have an approach, it doesn't always work like that. Even if your potential clients themselves are neurodivergent, like, you kind of have to water your garden. You don't overwater it. You don't underwater it. You don't like flood it with a bunch of like gallons of water and you don't forget about it in the desert for weeks. You've got to kind of like come in and work on building a rapport. And I think it's just like good business sense to do that, even if it's not going to lead to a sale, right? Like, relationships are the bread and butter of any community or movement that winds up getting built around a product, a service, or a brand. And if you've heard my other episodes that I've done where I've talked about branding, essentially you can understand a brand as the change you want to create in your community. Sometimes it can be a feeling, but like a prime example of this is like Nike, right? They want people to get into action. They want people to just do it. They want people to feel like they're action takers and making moves and that they don't hesitate, that they just do it. So my personal and professional coaching advice to you would be, when you are in the approach stage of your selling, think about how you want people to feel and the change that you want to create in your community. When you're early starting out and it's just you're a solopreneur, you don't really need to think about being this big mega brand. Like, you don't have to invest thousands of dollars in paying a designer to brand things out for you. It just so happens I've developed my brand because I have experience in that. But like, you don't have to pay somebody to do that for you. But if you think about how you want people to feel and the change that you want to create in your community with your product or service or your mission, and you really keep that in mind and be intentional with your approach instead of putting pressure on the potential relationship to produce a sale, you're going to be building the type of relationships that slowly grow but become more sustainable and give you long-term customer retention because you've done the work to build the rapport with your people. Okay, stage 4 of the creative sales process. This is where a lot of people panic. Sales presentation. But a presentation doesn't have to be like what we think of when we think of presentation. It doesn't have to be a webinar or a pitch deck. It can be a story in your caption about a client who stopped whatever they were struggling with and started getting whatever result that you offer, right? So for me, some of my clients will stop over-functioning and they'll finally set boundaries. Your sales presentation could be like a live stream where you teach and then naturally invite people into your offer. Some people call this presentation a hype event, or other people have called it like a turn-on event or like an activation promo. But like a sales presentation could be something as simple as like a voice memo where you explain what working with you looks like, right? Like, the key in the sales presentation stage of creative selling is to focus on the benefits, not necessarily the features. Like, don't just list what's included. You want to paint the picture of what really changes around the person that you serve with your service or your product. And then stage 5 of creative selling is handling objections. I don't even like the way this is worded, because if someone objects to something, it's not my job to handle their objection. It's my job to essentially guide them back to themselves, their own authority, and their own discernment about what would be best for them. But it's important when you get a no from someone or you get like a rejection, quote unquote, to recognize that objections aren't a rejection, not by any stretch of the imagination. Objections are curiosity more often than not. It's someone saying, I want this, but I'm scared. On social media, objections show up in the comments like, I don't have time for this, or this wouldn't work for me. When you are creatively selling, you are meeting objections with curiosity. In order to be a creative seller, you have to have a growth mindset. And in order to grow, you have to get creative. You have to create, you have to nurture, you have to birth, you have to grow, which is very different than the old school way of like hard selling, like Mad Men style selling. That type of selling comes from a very like A-B linear type of fixed mindset. That can be really degrading sometimes. It's like, without this product, your life is going to suck. When you're creatively selling, you could think of handling objections as getting curious about objections. You have to meet objections with curiosity. So instead of defensiveness, you can bring empathy and embodiment. You could say something like, I hear you. Let's explore that together. And of course, it has to be consensual, because if you're going to develop a rapport with anybody, you're going to have a consensual relationship. You're going to be curious about them. And essentially, you're going to make space for them to say what they're thinking about this. And if there's a part of you that can really connect with what they're saying, then you're in a good place to invite them to consider a different perspective. Like when a lot of people are like, I want this, but I'm too busy, I don't have time. Like I can deeply connect, excuse me, with the stage of life that I was in where I was like always so busy. When I worked in corporate, when I worked in Times Square at MTV, oh my gosh, I was the type of person that was like, yeah, I can meet you for lunch, but it's 6 minutes and it's scarfing down our like salad in our little blister plastic bowl while walking in front of 1515 Broadway, right? Like there was no real connection to anything I was doing because I was just so deeply in overcompensating, so steeped in corporate culture, from everything from a sense of self-importance to not having any boundaries around my time for the things that I wanted to do. And if I connect to somebody on that level around the services that I offer, then I can just share from experience essentially what the benefits and the pitfalls are of being someone who always sees what they want and desire, and the response is always that I'm busy or I can't or they don't make time for it. And I don't have to judge or shame anybody who has that type of objection, but to just be like, I see you. I know it's not easy, but if there's anything I could do to make it easier for you to say yes to what you want and make yourself available for what you want, I am here when you're ready. And then the sixth stage of creative selling is the close. So closing doesn't have to be awkward. It's just simply the moment where you extend the invitation clearly. Now, on organic social media, this might sound like, if this resonates with you, here is how to join, or doors are open until Friday, or click the link to book your session or learn more. If there's someone that you're actively building a rapport with and you think, I would really like to suggest my product or my service would be perfect for them, you can invite them in to your product or service saying, hey, I thought of you. I think this would be really great. Let me know if you're interested. And when you have that rapport with somebody, it doesn't feel so pressurized. It doesn't feel so intense. It feels as relaxed as saying, hey, we're going to go catch this movie on Friday. You want to come? And they're like, no, I'll catch the next one. Or hell yeah, like I need to get out of the house. It'd be so cool to go with you. Like that's how relaxed the close feels when you're kind of detached from the outcome. You're not putting pressure on the person to have to buy or pressure on yourself to have to sell. When you invest time in developing a rapport and you are in it for the long game in your business, what you create and how you serve. And then the seventh and the last step in creative sales is the follow-up. Now, the follow-up is so important. This is where so many entrepreneurs drop the ball. They post once, hear crickets, and then all their insecurities come up and then they give up. Around 80% of sales happen after the fifth follow-up, and yet 44% of salespeople give up just after one follow-up. And only about 2% of sales close on the very first contact. But if you're in a rhythm of developing a rapport, following up is just like another step of developing rapport. It's natural. People would even expect it if you're in regular conversation with them in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of people don't follow up because they don't want to be annoying. They don't want to come off as salesy. But following up could be as simple as sending a reminder email, posting another story about your offer, maybe even just checking in with someone who said that they were interested. 99% of the time, I guarantee that whoever you're inviting into your world or your offer or your product, after you've developed a rapport with them where you talk about what you do, have no problem getting into bed with you when it comes to your business. Of course, there are people who are going through really real situations where maybe they say something like, oh, I don't have the money for it, and they actually don't. You can trust people's responses when they tell you no. This isn't where you should pressure someone if they say no. You should treat them like a valued human being in your orbit and celebrate their yeses and their nos and even their maybes. But again, you can get curious. You can get curious in the follow-up. You can get curious in the objections and show up with embodiment and empathy. Don't embody the insecurities where you think I'm nagging them, I'm annoying them. Show up in the embodiment of knowing how much your product or service really does help the right people, and knowing that your job is only to see if they're the right people for you and if you can make an invitation and then be available for anything that comes up. I remember in the beginning when I was selling, I did not want to nag people. And this is me, someone who was an entrepreneur since I was a child. Again, I used to clean up rocks in my backyard and resell them as crystals after I polished them with clear nail polish. I grew up around my dad's marketing firm. My dad was featured in Ad Age when I was younger. My mom had her own business. Selling came really natural to me, but the social, societal conditioning that I received that told me because I was hyperactive or ADHD that I was annoying made it challenging to want to approach people multiple times. And if you're listening and you grapple with something like rejection sensitivity dysphoria, it's probably amplified tenfold. But most people out there aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves and the million things that they have going on in life. And if they see you showing up, being authentic, doing your thing for the right people, the people who matter, they're either going to be supportive, they're going to be inspired, or they're going to want to get into business with you. The people that just think you're annoying, if they're even out there, are not even on the same trip as you. They literally do not matter. Following up with people in the follow-up stage is not nagging. It is truly honoring the relationship that you have already built. And it becomes so much easier to feel that as truth when you take the pressure off of having to make a sale or having to quote unquote succeed early in your business. And you put the focus on what is the change that you can create together with your community, with your product or service. Okay, so here is where the link is between embodiment and selling and where my work ties in. The same practices that my clients learn, regulating their nervous system, creating self-care rituals, advocating for themselves, reframing insecurities grounded in the brilliance of your vision. These are all the exact skills that make selling feel safe. When you can stay grounded, you don't freeze in a sales conversation. When you practice using your voice and being visible, you can invite people into your offer without apology. When you claim the mantra that one of my clients claimed for themselves, why not me? I get to have what I came for. You can sell from sovereignty instead of trying to sell from pressure. It doesn't work, especially with neurodivergent people, if you try to pressure yourself. It'll just put you into a loop of avoidance or freeze or shutdown. Creative selling, it's not some trick or like some formula you have to follow in order to get it right. It is the natural overflow of embodiment. And on the subject of embodiment, I think it's really important to talk about AI here because so much about selling is changing with AI, right? Like AI is already transforming the selling process in a few major areas of the selling process, like prospecting. Now we have AI tools that can analyze engagement data and highlight who is most likely to convert. In our pre-approach stage, AI can summarize a prospect's history or even draft tailored outreach. When it comes to presentations, AI can generate so many things, right? The slide decks, the video scripts, even like we have chatbots that deliver personalized pitches. And then in the follow-up stage, automated sequences can keep the conversation alive and going long after the first contact. I mean, I think a lot of these AI assists can be helpful, especially if you grapple with capacity challenges as someone with a disability or neurodivergence. But I will caution, of course, AI cannot replace your embodied presence. People can feel that difference between something that is bot written and something that is your lived experience and your lived story. There is no substitute for having your unique perspective. And the entrepreneurs who are going to thrive are going to be those who can use AI as their creative ally, as like a supportive tool, but never to outsource their voice, to outsource your resonance or your sovereignty. Selling gets to feel in integrity with who you are. It gets to feel authentic. It gets to feel embodied. It does not have to be a performance. It can feel like creation. It can feel like art. It can feel like play. It can feel fun. And it can feel like you. And if you are ready to stop spiraling, to stop hiding, and start selling in a way that feels aligned and embodied and powerful, this is some of the work that we can do together in private coaching sessions. Through humor, radical honesty, somatic tools, conversational modeling, we can dissolve the pressure that you so often feel when you're selling and learn how to honor your wiring and build practices that actually sustain you, not just in business, but in leadership and in life. You can go over to xxxkatebailey.com/private-coaching-sessions to book your coaching session today. I also have packages available on the website if you want to save a little money and get more than one coaching session. Because in addition to being conscious of how all of this works, you deserve to be supported. And also because it's time. And because why not you? You get to have your big vision become a reality. You get to have what you came for.
Okay, that's it for this episode of the Play Big Queen podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. As always, eat the fruit, spit out the seeds, take what nourished you, keep what resonated for you, and leave the rest, because ultimately, you know best. This episode is over until next time, but we can keep this thing going. Go to xxxkatebailey.com, scroll to the bottom where it says join our community, and get on the email list to get all the juicy details about all my offerings and where Play Big Queens play together online, on social media, and in person. We've got a tight community of women claiming their boldest desires, celebrating wins, playing all out, fiercely standing for each other, and going higher together. Go to xxxkatebailey.com, put in your email address, and confirm your subscription. Once you're in, you'll get all the juicy guides, tips, and inspirations, and you get notified first about all the offers we have for all the big stuff we're doing over here. Go to xxxkatebailey.com to stay in the loop. That's xxxkatebailey.com. If you like what you heard in this podcast, subscribe, share it with your friends. And if you got something from this, I would appreciate some reviews and ratings. When you take the time to review the podcast, it helps our podcast get out to more women who need it. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and Spotify and show Play Big Queen some love. Also, I want you to know that my door is always open and I will always make space for you to be heard and to honor your experience. The views expressed in this podcast are through the lens of my personal identity and my own lived experience. I am a European mix, Mediterranean mutt who is an Italian, Sicilian, cis heterosexual woman born in New York, experiencing the world in a white body as a multiply neurodivergent who lives in a neurodiverse and racially blended family. And like everyone else, my one single perspective comes with its own limitations. I have done personal and professional work around anti-racism, diversity, equity, equality, and inclusion. I am not a therapist or doctor, and any coaching or advice cannot take the place of professional medical, mental health, or healing help. However, that being said, what happens in my work is often a very powerful, additional, supplemental, or alternative way to heal around identity work, mindset, and emotional wellness. Although I am not a licensed therapist, it is worth noting that in addition to being a mentor, I am trained and certified in emergency medicine and response. I have rendered care to over 20,000 patients in the course of my career. I have taught over 15,000 students, many of which had learning disabilities that were undiagnosed and came from diverse cultural backgrounds. I was also a private health college adjunct professor who was responsible for training medical professionals on how to respond to trauma and behavioral emergencies. If you approach me with any concern, you will be met with professionalism, compassion, tact, understanding, support, and a readiness and a willingness to advocate for your needs. That being said, sometimes I just get it wrong. I am a human being on my own growth journey after all. When I mess up, I'm always available for a courageous and crucial conversation that makes way for growth and healing. Your experience and voice matters to me. I sincerely welcome any feedback you feel called to share. You can email your comments or concerns to info@playbigqueen.com, knowing that I am open to having any and all crucial conversations needed. Okay, remember, you are brilliant. Celebrate yourself, value your own unique way, and honor your own timing, because you can totally create a life and business that feels good and is successful on your terms. Remember to release expectations of what you think your play big process should look like, and be willing to do the work that needs to be done to play big. But most of all, when you come face to face with your boldest desires, remember to trust yourself and play big, queen. Hi, queen. I see you're in it for the long game. If you reach this part of the podcast episode, it means you're interested in learning more about my work, my values, my mission, and my community. So let's go deeper together. I am here to activate neurodivergent women to play bigger and to show you that you are so capable of doing big things, and that if you value your own unique way and honor your own timing, you will learn to receive your boldest desires and so much more. In my world, what makes you different is valued, celebrated, honored, and welcome. I welcome all who identify as female and non-binary folk in my Play Big Queens community. We believe in and support LGBTQIA+2S, Black Lives Matter, women's and pro-choice rights, and obviously intersectional identities, including disabilities, neurodivergence, and religious beliefs. Personally, I am pro-sex worker rights, pro-Palestinian liberation, against Islamophobia, and against anti-Semitism, and I'm also against any cult-like religions that use beliefs as an excuse to indoctrinate people into abusive, autocratic systems. Like many neurodivergent people, we have big hearts and a strong sense of social justice around here. You are encouraged to stay and play in our Play Big Queen community if you share these values. For those who find the word queen does not resonate, perhaps because of imperial associations, the Play Big Self archetype can take any form, and the invitation and activation remains the same. To learn to embody your Play Big Self, to operate from love instead of fear, to go on a Play Big journey in community because you know that no Play Big queen can truly play big alone. To decide to cultivate the courage to use your voice, unmask, reclaim, embrace, and embody your brilliance, and create a life and business that works with the unique way that you work. Through this work, you will come to know the truth of your brilliance deeply. And as you come to know your authentic self, more and more will begin to open up for you. Knowing your unique brilliance will lead to great success and true belonging. In this world, we take the pressure off and learn to step off the traditional path so you can blaze your own trail. My mission is to get you motivated, inspired, and equipped to get into massive action and go on your very own Play Big journey. My mission is to empower at least 10,000 women to fully step into their Play Big self by offering healing, transformative, inclusive, and neurodiverse affirming coaching and content. Through innovative coaching programs, courses, and masterclasses, we provide the tools, support, sustainability, and community needed to help each woman embrace her unique path to confidence, success, and meaningful impact. If just 10,000 women with invisible disabilities and their allies were empowered with neurodiverse affirming and inclusive communication to express their unique brilliance, step into their authority and autonomy, and lead, the world would experience a profound shift towards inclusivity, innovation, and empathy. These women would break through societal limitations, modeling resilience, creativity, and strength of diversity. Their voices and perspectives, often shaped by unique experiences with challenges and perseverance, would redefine business leadership, inspire systemic change, and create spaces where diverse ways of thinking are not just accepted, but celebrated. Industries and communities would become more accessible and inclusive with practices that honor varied ways of working, communicating, and achieving. This change would ripple into every area of life and society. Workplaces would become more adaptable, offering a culture of respect for individual strengths. Healthcare and education systems would improve, centering accessibility and compassion in their approaches, and policies would evolve to better support those with invisible challenges, benefiting society as a whole. So many women with so much potential are shrinking in the face of their own brilliance, just sitting on the sidelines, waiting for permission instead of getting in the game. The activation of the latent potential in these women, their empowerment, making them visible, would inspire others, reduce stigma around invisible disabilities, and encourage everyone to lead authentically. Their successes will light the way for countless more women to rise, creating a culture of true diversity where every person feels valued, included, and emboldened to contribute their brilliance and lead with it. If you know you are ready for more clarity, confidence, and you want to embody your Play Big self and be supported around creating the big vision for your life and business, then send me an email at info@playbigqueen.com telling me why this work is so important for you, and we can explore opportunities to work together and make your Play Big dreams a reality.